Welcome to IFGF Care Group. I hope you'll enjoy tonight as we are entering into this new series called Hostage. This is our first week, and the topic we're talking about this week is called bitterness. These are one of the things that hold us hostage. And the text that we're using this week for bitterness is Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14 and 15. It says, "Make every effort to live in peace with all men and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one misses the grace of God and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." And right there, it's interesting that the scriptures called bitterness the root of bitterness. Why does it add this word root? You see, the root of a tree has three distinct qualities. Number one, it absorbs. That's the job of a root. I mean, the bark, the leaf, they don't absorb. The one that is absorbing things is the root. Number two, they store. They don't just absorb, they store. They store the things that they absorb. And the third thing, they grow. No plant can ever grow without the root. So that's the characteristics of a root. That's what a root does. It absorbs, it stores, and it grows. And unfortunately, that's what bitterness does in our lives. It absorbs every painful words, every bad thing, every intonation. It absorbs everything. All those negativity gets absorbed, and then it gets stored, and then it grows. And it grows into, fruit. And the Bible says that the fruit of bitterness is really poison. Poison. It defiles many. That's what it says. See, when the fruit is poison, it defiles many. It doesn't just defile the tree. It defiles everyone that partakes of that tree. It causes trouble. That's why we want to deal with it tonight. Let me illustrate from a story of someone that is so full of potential, so full of promise. He is a prince. I mean, think about Prince William or Prince Harry. Except this guy is a lot more handsome and a lot richer than those princes that I just mentioned. His name was Absalom. He is a magnificent person. And he is the son of the most beloved king in Israel's history, King David. Like anything else, usually bitterness starts with something that is not our fault. Something happened to us. That's what happened to Absalom. You see, he has a very beautiful sister. The story is in 2 Samuel chapter 13. You see, Absalom had a very beautiful sister named Tamar. And his half-brother, Amnon, same father, different mother, fell in love with his sister. Now, Amnon was overcome with lust over Tamar, and he wanted to lie with her. So he tricked her. He pretended to be ill, and then when David came to his room, he said, "Please send my sister Tamar to bake a couple of cakes in my sight, and then feed them by hand to me so I can eat from her hand." So David, thinking of nothing else, he did just that. And when Tamar did that, he said to Tamar, "Come on, lie with me." And Tamar said, No, don't do this thing. Just ask for my hand from Father. He'll give me to you. Marry me properly. But he said, "No, I want you now." So he ended up raping her. Immediately his feelings changed towards Tamar after he had sex with her. All the love he felt for her turned into hatred, which was more intense than the love that he thought he had for her. So he drove her away. And Tamar, who was wearing a very beautiful dress, as is the common dress for princesses that are still virgin at that time, tore her dress and put ash on her head. And Absalom said, "What happened to you? Did your brother Amnon sleep with you?" And so Absalom basically took Tamar in. That's actually the job of Amnon, to take her in and really make her his wife, but he wouldn't do that. So Absalom took her in and took care of her. Now, it says that in 2 Samuel 13, verse 21, when King David heard about this, he was furious. But the problem is, he never did anything about it. And then verse 22, oh, the scary verse. This is what happens when people get bitter. It says, Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. That was the beginning. You see, that's the telltale signs of bitterness, which is, he said nothing. You see, an offense happened, and people say, oh, I'm fine. But you don't deal with it. You don't take action and to really resolve this thing, and you just kind of sweep it under the rug, and you just don't talk about it, neither good nor bad. That's the telltale signs of the beginnings of the roots of bitterness. The problem with any root, though, it doesn't stop. It continues to absorb, it continues to store, and it continues to grow. So after that happened, he kind of been waiting for, come on, Dad, what are you going to do? You, the father, you're the king. You're supposed to be justice here, bring justice to the matter. Of course, David didn't do anything at all. So after 2 years, Absalom did a little party. He invited everybody, actually including David, but David didn't want to go. And in that party, he killed Amnon when he got drunk. So you see, suddenly now, things that looks quiet on the surface, doesn't talk, people don't talk to each other. Suddenly, it becomes it becomes a fruit, a poisonous fruit suddenly come up. Actually, not suddenly. It's 2 years in the making. And a murder happened. Of course, after that, he had to flee because he committed the murder. He fled, and after 3 years, still the father doesn't do anything either. So Joab, David's trusted military commander, lobbied David to, come on, it's been 3 years, he's your son, bring him back. So David, okay, bring him back. So he sent an emissary to where Absalom was. Absalom came back to Jerusalem after 3 years. But David doesn't want to see him. He went back to his house. David didn't see him. And another 2 years passed, and he was just left alone. He got so frustrated. Bitterness, when it's not dealt with, it just grows into, like the fire underneath, it's just festering. It's just boiling right there underneath the surface. So Absalom, after 2 years, he couldn't stand it no more. I mean, you called me here, but you don't want to talk to me. He burned the field of Joab just to get some attention. And then this is the message that he says. Let me see the king's face. But if there's an iniquity in me, let him execute me. He's saying, look, don't just leave me alone. Talk to me or execute me. Do something to me. Just don't ignore me. Bitterness, ignored, some people think time will heal. Time will not heal. Time does not heal. We need to deal with it. You know what happened after that? So, okay, they met, and then no reconciliation. All these years, still, 7 years passed, no reconciliation. They do not deal with the bitterness. 4 more years passed. He is still being ignored in Jerusalem after he got called back, and the king met with him. Another 4 years passed, and he finally rebelled against his father, and war erupted. The worst war, the most painful war in the life of David. David actually had to flee Jerusalem and walked with his 10 concubines. He left it in the palace and all that, and unspeakable horrors came. I mean, Absalom, when he came into the palace, he still see the 10 concubines that his father left in the palace. He put them on the roof, and then he slept with them in front of the whole Israel. He was that angry and bitter against his own father. And finally, a big war erupted. 20,000 people died. And finally, Absalom, well, he was riding his mule. His head was caught in the oak branches, and there he hung. And then Joab came and with 3 spears into his heart. He was killed. His servants was beating him up like a dead dog, and he was thrown into a hole on the ground. They just piled up some stones. Tragic, because in Jerusalem, Absalom had prepared for himself a mausoleum, a monument, but that monument never had his body to be remembered, because his body was buried like a dead dog somewhere in the jungle. What a tragic story from a prince that didn't do anything wrong in the beginning until he became such a disgrace and he died like that. What happened? That, ladies and gentlemen, is the work of bitterness. It does not stop. It keeps festering and growing, because that's what roots do. You know, once you have a tree, you know, it just doesn't stop growing. The root keeps absorbing, it keeps storing, it keeps growing. You don't want this in your life. It's very good if you, in a moment, you're gonna discuss with each other, is there anything like this going on in your life? How do you kill bitterness? Here's how you kill bitterness. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31 and 32. Get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ. You see, right there is the formula for breaking free from bitterness. 2 words. 1, compassion. 2, forgiveness. 2 things that Absalom never had in his life: compassion and forgiveness. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your time to discuss right now. How is your life? Can you identify any issues like this? And how are you going to apply compassion and forgiveness? You see, when we forgive, we let go the people that are wrong against us, and we set them free. That's in your mind, but in reality, you are the one being set free. You see, here's a verse that I'd like to read for you from 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 19. For this is commendable, if because of conscience toward God, one endures grief, suffering wrongfully. For what credit is it if when you are beaten for your faults, you take it patiently? But when you do good and suffer, if you take it patiently, this is commendable before God. For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps. You see, when somebody does something wrong to us, don't be surprised. It's already in the Bible. It is commendable if you suffer it patiently. So, I hope you're blessed with these words, and I hope you have a great discussion tonight about uprooting the roots of bitterness. God bless you.